About 7 hours and 3 runs into Darkest Dungeon 2, I found myself looking at this screen, and something felt off. I didn't care. Sure, the game was fun, challenging, and engaging. I was wholeheartedly excited to start another run, but I didn't care about the characters. I didn't care about the 4 heroes that had just been killed by a Shambler, and I sure didn't care about the 4 heroes I was about to embark with. The countless deaths just washed over me. I didn't feel that same sense of somber reflection that I had experienced when losing characters in Darkest Dungeon 1. I sat back in my chair and tried to wrap my head around what I was feeling. There was, of course, the obvious answer. You spend far less time with each hero than you did in the first game. In Darkest Dungeon 1, you would watch them grow over many missions, and see them through a number of different situations. That was certainly part of it, but it didn't totally explain how I felt. Darkest Dungeon 2 has much better character development and deeper interactions. The characters fall in love, become suspicious, and gain each other's respect. There are so many little stories to get attached to, and the runs are so long that you have a lot of opportunities to see them grow. And yet, when my fleshed out, highly developed characters die, I don't really care. Now, after having played the game for 22 hours, I understand what I was feeling. In Darkest Dungeon 2, characters never die. I mean, sure, Dismas might succumb to burning, bleeding, poison, or all 3 at once, but once the run is over, he's back on the character select screen like nothing ever happened. Mourning the death of Dismas would be like playing a game of Melee and mourning the death of Fox McCloud. After just 1 hero dies, the run is basically over. I'm sure that at some point, someone will beat the final boss with just 3 heroes, but it's definitely not going to be me. The game is way too hard at 75% strength. Once one of my characters goes down, my party almost always wipes in the next couple fights. And just like that, Dismas is back in action and ready to go. The problem I'm having with Darkest Dungeon 2 is that there's no feeling of permanency. No reminders of your failures or the people you left behind. Each run is completely isolated, and once you move on to the next one, the memories and stories fade quickly. Compare that to Darkest Dungeon 1, where a single playthrough takes a minimum of 50 hours. Losing someone here isn't just something you can brush off and forget about. It sticks with you and forces you to push on without them. A single poorly timed crit might upend your entire strategy, taking away a hero that you relied on and grew attached to. After coming to terms with what just happened, you'll need to reevaluate your situation and find a new path forward. Bad things will happen to you, but the game always encourages you to be resilient and fight past the loss. The first time I lost Dismas in Darkest Dungeon 1, it really hurt. I made a mistake, and he was gone for good. It wasn't the end of the run, or a reason to reset. It was the loss of a loyal scoundrel who had been with me since returning to the hamlet. I had seen him grow and gain more confidence, taking on ever more tenuous foes in that black labyrinth, and I wasn't getting him back. I'm not here to say that Darkest Dungeon 2 is a bad game because it doesn't have this element, but for me, Darkest Dungeon was fundamentally a game about loss. It was a game about overcoming adversity, and not giving up when things got rough. Darkest Dungeon 2 is a great game, but it's not a great sequel. It might have the same combat mechanics, imagery, and voice acting as the first game, but it doesn't have the same spirit. However, the game is only in early access, and we're likely to get tons of new content over the next few years. Darkest Dungeon 1 also went through an extensive early access period, and after the game was fully released, we got 2 major pieces of DLC that fundamentally changed the formula. Darkest Dungeon on day 1 was very different from the game we love today, and I expect that Darkest Dungeon 2 will follow a similar path. I'm really excited to see how Darkest Dungeon 2 develops, and if any of these issues are ever addressed. I do really enjoy the game for what it is, but I want to see loss worked back into the framework. It's not going to happen immediately, but I hope we get there eventually. Thanks for watching.